Have you ever been in the deepest slumber, dreaming about something wonderful, and then suddenly, that dreaded sound? There has to be a better way to wake up, so I got to thinking, and then it hit me. What if I built a custom bed that wakes me up slowly and peacefully? Certainly, this would be the solution to my alarm clock problem. If your circadian rhythm wasn't disrupted by screens and alarms, you'd go to bed when the sun sets and gradually wake up when the sun crests the horizon. Ever since the dawn of time, human sleep schedules have closely followed the rising and setting of the sun. So I asked myself, what if I can recreate this? I have three main goals for this bed design. 1. I want it to be extremely well built and sturdy, so it'll last me for many years.
The precision with which the pieces are joined together.
2. I want the headboard to be visually inspired by nature. Why, you ask? Because I want to, and because I'm tired of seeing furniture that only has right angles.
Angles other than 90 degrees.
And finally, I want this bed to wake me up in a more peaceful manner than my alarm clock, which we'll get to later. This project, like many of my builds, will have to take place entirely outdoors, as it's too big to be constructed in my 12 by 20 foot shop. Ever since my projects have grown in scale and I've acquired more tools, the more and more I end up working entirely outside. Even if I had a fully equipped indoor shop, I would definitely miss working outside. There's something very human about doing your work outdoors, rain or shine. The wood I'm using for this project is 3/4 inch hemlock trim boards from the big box store. You're probably thinking this is both impractical and expensive, and you're right. The reason I'm going with this option is because I had a gift card that was given to me by a company from a previous sponsorship, so I thought I'd make use of it. The result of this decision is that I bought every remaining hemlock trim board from Lowe's, which totaled around $450. There definitely would have been cheaper ways to do this, but this was the cheapest way for me. The downside is that most of the pieces of this bed frame are thicker than 3/4 inches. So, for example, the legs of the bed, I had to cut and glue 3 layers of the trim boards to achieve my final thickness. So at this point I have all 4 legs of the bed cut down. For this bed design, I really want it to feel chunky and sturdy, and I'm pretty happy with the size of these legs here. But I do have a bit of a problem, which is that since I had to rip these down in 2 passes on the table saw, it left quite a noticeable cut line down the center. So I'm gonna have to All of these pieces of wood are going to make up the headboard, and they're gonna overlap each other slightly, and this is where the hidden feature of this bed is gonna come into play. I wanna visually tie this headboard to the lamp that I recently made that goes above my bed. This overlapping design for the headboard is gonna look interesting, but the completely straight boards I feel are just lacking a bit of character, so I need to do something about that. Since the headboard is the main focal point of the design, I wanted to use it as a canvas to experiment on. My second main goal was for this design to be visually inspired by nature. So by cutting the overlapping sides of the headboard slats with these angles, it would create a landscape-like design that resembled layered hills or mountains. I think with the more organic designs, you can't really plan things out too much in advance. Otherwise, things start to look a bit too robotic and predictable. This is the same as how when you draw something quickly, it's usually more true to the idea in your head than if you carefully drew each line and erased. I think the more critical you are of your work, the more the original essence of your idea can get lost. Okay, so the next thing that I have to do is figure out how to attach the slats to the actual legs. The combination of those 2 elements is gonna create the headboard itself. But the problem is that the slats not only are at an angle, but they have to be overlapping each other with at least a 1/2 inch of room in between them. The reason that I need that 1/2 inch gap is to accommodate the hidden feature that's gonna help wake me up. And the other consideration is that this joint between the slats and the legs is what's gonna provide most of the strength. I recently got a domino jointer. I haven't used a domino in a while, so.
Multiple dominoes that you're trying to line up, it lets you get them together.
These are all the pieces of the bed frame. I think it's pretty cool to see them all laid out flat before starting the assembly process. It's a bit like getting a new Lego set as a kid and dumping all the parts on the ground before building. I used the domino joiner to cut all these mortises in the headboard slats. The domino simplifies the joinery process so much, but if you don't have one, you can always drill holes and use dowels instead. All these strips are 1/2 inch thick, and they're gonna act as spacers in between all of the boards on the headboard. I glued one spacer to each headboard slat. This will allow there to be a 1/2 inch air gap between the layers where the hidden feature will later get installed. So the next thing I need to do is glue all of these boards into one big panel that'll form the headboard. And while I do that, I want to talk a little bit about my planning process for my projects. I'm a very visual person, and the best tool that I've found to plan out my projects is Milanote. So when they reached out to me to sponsor this video, I was very excited because Milanote's been part of my workflow for many years now. Milanote is essentially an online corkboard where you can organize all of your ideas into one place. I used Milanote to help plan my last project, which was building this sliding lamp. And another big project that I used it on was to help plan shots for this documentary that I filmed a couple years ago. My planning process for this bed project began by writing all of my main design goals down. On this main homepage, I added my sketches and dimensions so that I can easily reference them while I'm building. And the great thing is that Milanote has an app for your phone, so I can easily pull up my dimensions and checklist while I'm outside working. I also love creating a step-by-step checklist so that when things get a little bit overwhelming with the project, I know exactly what to do next. It's really important for me to create a cohesive visual aesthetic throughout all my projects. And so for this bed design, I created a sub board, which is a mood board full of reference images that I thought were inspiring or helpful. I can add little notes and link them to different images. For example, I liked these images of mountains and natural terrain as an inspiration for the layered headboard. And I was able to add this comparison photo of different lighting temperatures to get a sense of what I wanted to use for the hidden feature of this bed. I also dropped this image of these live edge floorboards and these rock roof shingles, which both somewhat inspired the overlapping nature of the headboard. I also added some images of wood and wood finishes that I liked as I'm thinking about how I want to finish this bed. If I ever want a second opinion about my ideas for a project, all I have to do is click the share button and I can collaborate in real time on my board with other people. Milanote is available for free with no time limit, so if you want to check it out, sign up for a free Milanote account using the link in the description. Thank you to Milanote for sponsoring this video. Alrighty, that didn't work out too bad. So because I wasn't able to clamp this up while I glued all of these pieces together, I'm a little bit concerned about its strength as is, and I'm gonna be moving this panel around a lot when I'm joining it to the legs. I grabbed my drill and I tossed it in the air because I thought it would look cool in slow motion, which it didn't. And so to strengthen things up a bit, I drove in around 20 screws to fasten the panel together. So I have a bit of a problem. When I glued up this panel, I shoved all of the boards up against the other leg. That worked out well, and that means that that side of the panel is completely flat with the leg. There aren't any gaps, but there's a lot of gaps over here. The root cause of that is that each of these boards is a slightly different length. They're all supposed to be 52 inches long. I'm not building a bed that has a ton of visible gaps. I sanded the problematic side flat with some 60 grip sandpaper, and it was time to see if that had fixed the issue. That's way better. There's not really any gaps. That's good. I mean, there's some gaps, but nothing that a little bit of wood filler can't fix. I had to figure out how to attach this massive panel I just built to the two legs on either side. And after some careful tracing and marking, I got the position of all the joints and started cutting them with the domino jointer. Time to do the test fit. I certainly hope this works. Things don't usually fit together for me on the first try, but oh, I didn't expect that to work first try. Neither did I, dude. I know, dude. Pretty stoked. It's awesome. I sanded the legs smooth and gave them a slight 1/8 inch round over so that there's no sharp edges to hurt yourself on. At this point, I could really see my vision coming together. As I glued up the headboard, I got to thinking about how even just a couple years ago, I would have felt intimidated about building a bed because of its sheer size. I think it's natural to equate the largeness of a project with it being difficult or complex, but those two often aren't correlated. Yes, it may be more challenging and take longer because you have to handle larger materials, but that in no way means that it's less possible than a smaller size project. Got some ratchet straps here. Come on, bro, they're tangled up. It's not ideal. This was a bit of a shortfall in my planning for this glue up. I should have done a dry fit to see if the straps would provide enough force to pull the joints together. How do I clamp this? But instead, I had to realize just how bad they actually worked while the glue was drying. Luckily, with some persuasion from my mallet, I was able to get the joints a little bit tighter. However, they definitely need some wood filler, and this was overall a frustrating experience. After filling the gaps left from the glue up, I set the headboard aside because I needed to build the footboard. The longer that you design and make stuff, common themes will start to emerge from your work. I look at some projects as a way to expand my style in a new direction, while other projects I want to fit into my existing body of work. With all these branches of your style, it provides a framework for consistency in the future, while also giving you the freedom to not be confined to just one style. I've got all of the pieces of the footboard sanded to 220 grit, extremely smooth. So now it's time to glue this whole thing together. I just realized I have a bit of a problem, which is that this entire section is about 56 inches long, and the longest clamp that I have is 48. So I need to figure out some way to clamp these joints tight when I glue it up, so that I don't have any gaps. I think I have an idea. My thought is that in using these pocket hole screws, it'll pull the joint together for when I glue it up. After the glue is dry, it doesn't really matter. We're looking pretty good here. This feels extremely solid. I'm glad that I used the biggest dominoes possible. I'm kind of now just realizing how easy it actually is to build a bed. All you really need to do is make a footboard, make a headboard, and then have two boards that span in between for the sides. For those, I glued two 3/4 inch boards face to face to make it thicker. I made these pieces 75 inches long because that's the length of a full-size mattress, which is larger than my childhood bed, as many of you astutely noticed in my last video. Now I needed to decide what type of finish I wanted for this bed. Although I liked the wood grain, I felt like the orange hue of the finished hemlock was not the direction I was looking for. I wanted a lighter, almost bleached look that still let the wood grain show through. I used a semi-transparent stain, which I applied with a brush, and then I wiped off the excess with a rag. I ended up sealing the bed with wipe-on polyurethane, and that gave it a very smooth, natural wood feel. One of the final steps before I could get to work on the hidden alarm feature was to screw in some bed frame hardware. Okay, I've run into a bit of an issue, which is that the countersinks on all of these bed hardware pieces are too shallow, and that means that they will no longer slide together because these screws are poking up too far. So, that might have done it. Pretty much flush, so maybe I need to grind it a little bit more.
Yeah. Let's go.
Now that I have all of the hardware installed, the bed frame itself is pretty much ready to assemble. But before I can actually put a mattress on this and assemble the whole thing, I needed to cut some thin strips for the bed slats to sit on top of. Before I could make too much progress on those, I got slightly distracted.
What are you working on?
What am I working on?
Yeah.
I'm finishing up my bed. that I'm gonna sleep on.
What's that saw right there?
What's this saw?
Yeah.
This is the table saw.
For what?
It's for cutting long pieces like this.
Can you show me?
Yeah, I'll show you.
You need your helmet.
That's right, I need my helmet. You might want to plug your ears.
I want to see the cut.
That used to be one piece of wood.
Can you pass me the small one?
I in fact didn't pass him the small one because I needed to screw it down to the inside face of the side rails. Just as I'd finished building all the parts of the bed, summer was over, and it was time to load up the car and drive to school. As I was heading down to college, I got to thinking about the stuff we own. We form relationships with the objects around us, and those objects shape our day-to-day lives whether we like it or not. Stuff has such a heavy grasp on us, and we don't even notice it. The products we use can be inspiring, frustrating, or mundanely pedestrian. In my quest to make a good quality bed that would last for years, it made me think back to all of the projects I built that I don't often use. As people who design and build stuff, it's our job to make things that people will actually use, and not just cheap shit that will find its home in the landfill. Some objects hold value because we spend a lot of money to get them. Others find value through their sentimental nature, which can only be gained through constant use or an emotional connection. In many ways, the goal of a craftsman is to build something so good and indispensable that its constant use creates a connection between it and its owner. Oh. Holy sh! Take a look around you. How many of the objects you own are older than 5 to 10 years? If the answer is none, that's probably not a great sign. I think physical objects are kind of like friends. You want to get high quality ones right off the bat and then never let them go. But in order to keep them in your life, you need to take good care of them. I can only hope that this bed frame is a material possession that inspires me to keep it in service for many years to come. But I guess only time will tell. If you haven't gathered by now, I'm installing these LED strips in the half-inch gap under each board. The idea is to have them light up whenever I set my alarm. So instead of waking up to a harsh sound, you wake up more gradually as they get brighter, just as you naturally wake up with the sun. I got all the LED strips soldered together. Hopefully they should light up. This is my first time testing this. Why is it not working? Why is it not working? Oh, dude. That turned out so good. That looks better than I expected. And it has a dimmer. Dang, that gets pretty bright. Now that I know that the lights work, I need to add the adapter that's gonna allow me to control this with my phone and set it as an alarm. And this part is gonna be fairly simple because I'm just using an off-the-shelf smart plug, which many of you suggested for my previous project. I plug the lights directly into this, and then I can use the app to connect with Bluetooth, and I can set an alarm for when I want these lights to turn on. There's a link in the description to this exact adapter that I used. That's not going anywhere. Let's test the strength here. Not bad. Not bad. I've been sleeping in this bed for about a month and using the lights in the headboard to wake me up. It works incredibly well. I find that the lights wake me up much more gently than a normal alarm, and rather than jolting awake, I'm slowly brought to consciousness. The placement of the LED strips is perfect because it shines right above my head, and the level of brightness makes it impossible for me to go back to sleep. This might be one of my favorite functional projects I've made because it actually improves my morning routine quite a bit. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe and hit the like button. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.